When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. I have with me special guest, Danny Kerr, co-founder and director of sales at Breakthrough Academy. Danny's career started young in his teens when he started and built his own painting company. In 2015, he and his partners, Igor and James, decided to build Breakthrough Academy. They currently have over $1.9 billion in revenue under management. He loves the F word: faith, family, friends, fitness, and financials. In that order. I'm super excited for this show. Danny, good morning.
Morning, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super glad you're here. I've heard you speak a couple of times. I love what you bring to the table for the entrepreneur. Systems, processes, implementation, sales. Talk to us a little bit about what was the brainchild behind this? Why did you guys, Igor and James, get together and build Breakthrough Academy? What was the purpose of that?
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier we ran a painting company. It was under a franchise organization called the TFC. It used to stand for the franchise company. It was acquired by First Service along the way, but that sub-brand, a lot of people would know it in northern US and Canada, called College Pro Painters. So it was basically like a student-based painting organization.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, there you go. So the kind of like, it introduced me to the world of not only painting, but the world of like franchising and the world of the business of painting. So I spent 8 years there, and James and Igor as well. Like James actually used to be my boss years ago. And the idea kind of popped up along the way, which was like, man, we are so good at training young people how to run these small businesses. And it's funny, we're actually not the greatest at probably painting itself. Probably could do a better job of that. But like what I felt we were world class at was taking a young person who knew nothing about business and getting them to go from 0 to 60 within the roughly 8-month period. And so there's all these processes in how we did that. There's also a cool community that got built amongst the franchisees. There's coaching that I was doing amongst the franchisees every week, holding them accountable. And doing that for 8 years, I realized I was like, how do we take this model of what franchises do to support their franchisees and just take it out of the franchise and offer it as just a program to people? So that's kind of how it got started. And I finally had the guts to go do it. But it festered in my mind for a lot of years where I was like, that what I just said is like, it blew me away how good it was systemized. It also blew me away how unsystemized the average business was publicly that was out there working day to day. And I also realized, nobody trains an entrepreneur how to run a business. Everyone assumes for some reason they're business people. They're probably not. Like most of them aren't. Most of them are just wild, harebrained entrepreneurs with too many ideas and a zest for life, and they want to go see what they're capable of. But the actual like mechanics of an organization, they have to learn how to do it through trial and error. And I was like, I bet you we could save a ton of that trial and error if we just built a process and put them into our program. So, yeah.
I love it. That's a great story. There's so many places I could go with this. I worked for College Pro Painters for a couple of summers. You get a bunch of kids together, you paint a house every 3 days, try not to spill any paint on the concrete. I mean, there's some fun stories I could share there. But I want to go back to a comment that you made, and you worked 8 years, TFC, College Pro Painters, whatnot, and you said, I finally had the guts to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people sit in that chair every day, and they think to themselves, man, I'd love to get out of this rat race. I'd love to start my own business. I'd love to be my own boss. I'd love to do that. What was it that actually pushed you over the edge? What was it that gave you those final guts to just do it?
There's a lot of turmoil, actually, weirdly enough. So I left College Pro. I was about to go do my own thing. I ended up getting wrapped up with another company for 2 years. It was a management consulting firm. And I built part of their program with them. And I was kind of vying for ownership, and they wouldn't give it to me. And then I got let go right before Christmas. And 6 months prior to that, my mom died from cancer. And then about 2 months after that, my grandpa died. And it was kind of just, and my dad had died a long time ago. My dad died when I was 14. So I kind of was like alone in the world. Like I had my wife, I had my new little baby, a little 6-month-old baby that was just born as well. And that was it. It was just me against the world. And yeah, I just remember being like, fuck it. Like I can't not do this. Like there's so much, when you have that kind of like, when your whole world gets, the slate was clean for me. It was like, there was nothing more for me to go do or not do. I could choose who I wanted to be in this world. And I'd go to Thailand and disappear for 10 years and never see a soul again that I knew. Or I could dig in and build a family and build a business and build a life and build a way of being and stand for who I am. And I just couldn't not ignore that idea of just like, this is the thing, Danny, that was going to define you. You had to go do it. You've just been ignoring it for so freaking long. Go, get out there. And
wow,
to deny myself of that would have been just, I wouldn't have felt, even at that management consulting firm, I was kind of depressed for 2 years because like, I don't feel like I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it kept tugging at me. And it took that much loss, if I'm honest, to like rip me away from like the safe way of living life and just be like, screw it, go. You've got nothing to lose at this point. And so I did.
You mentioned in the bio you had a tough upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
How did that impact your entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah. I mean, I've briefly mentioned, but yeah, my dad died when I was 14 from a heroin overdose. So
wow,
there was a lot of crazy stuff in life at that time in life. And yeah, like I'm very dyslexic. I remember failed grade 4. I just remember like failure was kind of like who I was. And especially when my dad died, I kind of looked at him and I realized like, I'm probably going to become you if I don't make some pretty drastic changes. And when you're 14, you're kind of in that stage of like, who do I want to be? And what's my identity? And do I want to be the smoke pit kid hanging out with the rebels? Or do I want to be the smart kid or the prep kid or the, you got to like pick your tribe in a way. And I was pretty lost leading up to being 14 years old. I was pretty angry at the world. And when he died, I kind of realized like, this is going to be me if I don't like pull my shit together. And yeah, I mean, I'm also a Christian. Like I prayed a lot about this. I felt like God kind of took the reins in my life a bit and just kind of said, I'll be your dad. I got this. And we're going to go and like apply yourself to life and stop telling yourself you're a failure. Stop telling yourself you can't do it. Stop telling yourself you can't read, write, whatever, and start problem solving and go from like, I can't do this to like, how can I do this? And I started to problem solve things. First was school. It was, I struggled always. And I ended up with a 4.0 GPA in grade 12 because for 4 years, I was just very focused on what it took to be able to work with my teachers in school and not in a traditional way. I didn't get better at reading and writing. I got good understanding why the assignments were important and what they were trying to get through to to me.
Yeah.
I remember with my English teacher, I remember doing Shakespeare and he's like, you need to be able to write like a short essay in Shakespearean. And I was like, dude, I can't even do English, let alone like try and turn that into some kind of Shakespearean speech. And I was like, can I just research about him and then just talk? I'm a good talker and I can sit in front of a class and do a speech. And he's just like, without having to read it word for word, and I could just do it my normal English way. And he's like, yeah, you can do that. And it was the first time I got an A in English. And I was like, okay, I get how this works. Like it's what he wanted for us was us to respect and understand Shakespeare. He didn't care that I could write it. Right. And so I started doing that in everything in my life. It was just kind of this like, how can we? So whenever I was met with like, can't be done, I'm like, okay, but if we had to, how would we do it? And that problem solving mindset really started to take over because I saw a lot of success from it.
Yeah, a lot of success. 1.9 billion in revenue currently under management.
Yeah, and it's
That's
grown
good.
now too since then.
That
Yeah,
so it's even more. So it could be over 2 billion in revenue.
it's over two. It's over two. Yeah,
It's over
yeah.
2 billion in revenue. You know, I'm all about the entrepreneur. I'm all about the small businessman. I'm all about helping them out. What's the number one thing where you see small businesses fall short? What's the number one problem in the small business today?
So there's a general lack of direction that they all go into business with, right? It's just general, like, feel it out, make mistakes, get burned, hopefully figure it out along the way. In the early stages, I think most people don't have the confidence to keep pushing forward when they get through like pretty bad times, right? So I think there's like a natural, I call it Darwinism of business, that you get to your first million, like you probably had to go through hell and back to do that. And it's a lot of it's just from the trial and error. It's the inability to pay your staff. It's the job that cost you $400,000 and now you're in debt. It's the stuff that tests you. And I think that's kind of the first phase. And so actually I used to look at this in franchisees that I would hire to run franchises. It was called fundamental, their ability to handle stress in pursuit of a goal. And that's kind of like the first test I think that most people go through. And getting through that, you suddenly have this almost chip on your shoulder where it's like, I can get through hard times. Like all I need to do is dig in, work hard, and just, I used to even have the motto myself, which was like, I may not be able to outsmart you, but I will definitely outwork you. And I think that's kind of like the confidence train that you start to ride on until you hit to this next place where you realize like you can't outwork an unsystemized business, because when it's you and 5 people, under you, it's easy enough to make up for their days when they don't show up, to pick up the messed up pieces and just make them right through pure hard work and time. When you've got a staff of 10, 20, 30, 40 people, you're just a drop in the ocean of time. Like you cannot impact every single person's mistakes and every single operational, misstep. And you have to build things that exist without you around, right? If you were hit by a bus, would things operate without you? Most people would say no.
Yeah.
And so thinking through that is a very hard thing for your brain to do, because you've spent so much time being successful just through applying like active experimentation, just like, I'm going to go do it all the time. You become like the ultimate doer, and you have to become a bit more of like a thinker and a bit more of like a, let's step back and do things once well so that the whole team benefits. And it's slower and it's a bit counterintuitive, especially when you've got emergencies going on every day and you have fires going on every day. But it's being able to slow down and think through, like, there's patterns here in this business. We've done this long enough to know roughly when low season is and high season is, to know roughly how long the average field labor lasts, to know roughly, how much profit we would make on a job, to know roughly how many doors we got to knock to get a lead, to know, like, there's patterns in business, and you have to step back and identify those patterns and start to build a business plan out of that. So you not only know where you're going, but your team knows where you're going. Because if you can't direct that energy and effort in one, path, everyone just goes off on their own path and the thing becomes chaos, which I think a lot of people experience. So it's just being able to organize those things into a series of steps and processes and numerical numbers and ratios, and start to say, okay, this is actually the business plan, and we have relative confidence in this because we've done this for so many years. So that's the next big stage. That's what we work with everybody on. So.
I'm going to tell you what, there was so much to unpack in that 3 minutes that, I literally, I think this is one of my absolute favorite shows. This is a very profound statement. This might be the best statement I've ever heard on the show. You can't outwork an unsystemized business. I got to let that sink in. You can't outwork an unsystemized business. Holy smokes. That is so true. That is so true. It just blows me out of my chair. When you make that statement, what is the solution today that Breakthrough Academy provides the entrepreneur?
Yeah, and it took us 10 years to get to this point, but it's what we call this thing called the contractor growth method, right? So there should be a methodology in which you should and can grow. And I think of it kind of like a car. Like if you look at today's cars, like everything that's a sedan kind of looks like a Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, why is that? Back in the 50s, everyone had these cool, crazy, wild, neat designs. It was artistically really cool, but it wasn't efficient. And so it got down to the point where we live in a modern world where the Honda Civic is the body style and is the general like setup for a really efficient, high value vehicle that can drive forward. And so we've kind of done that, right? So with the amount that we manage and the amount of members we have and have had over the years, not only do we kind of know what best practices should be for a business, we also see the patterns across hundreds and hundreds of contracting companies. And because we're niched into, landscaping, painting, renovations, snow removal, junk, certain contracting spaces,
service-based businesses.
Yeah, it's service and construction. And because we've niched into those, we don't only just see the patterns of a business, we see the patterns of that industry. And we can say, okay, this is exactly what your financials should look like. This is how much sales it's going to take to get to here, how many leads you're going to require. This is how many production hours you're going to need, so how many staff you need. This is the profile of that kind of staff member. This is the interview questions you want to ask for that kind of, to find out if you have that kind of person you're interviewing. These are the ads you're going to want to put out to attract those kinds of people. Like everything is pretty much figured out within this contractor growth method that we teach. And then what I've done with it is I've realized, or our team has done with it, is we've realized, look, like we can franchise the crap out of this thing, even though we're not franchising it, but we can like systemize the crap out of this thing. People are still going to want to put their custom spin on everything because they're still entrepreneurs. They're not going to want to be put into a box. So how do you teach all of these things in a way where it's modeled out and it's 80% complete, but then 20% allows them to put their custom tweaks on it because everyone has unique things. And that's kind of what we've done. That's what we've been building. So without realizing it, for the first 5 of those 10 years, we just built what people needed. For the last 5 years, we've been like, there's a pattern to all the patterns, and let's just build it. And we'll call it the contractor growth method. So,
and where does that start? If I'm listening to the show and I'm like, man, Danny, what you're saying is resonating with me. Yeah, you're right. I did a $400,000 job and I screwed it up and now I'm in debt the $400,000 and man, my financials are a mess. And you're right. I don't hire the best people. I don't even know what questions to ask. I kind of meet them at a Starbucks and, we have a good conversation. And if it feels good, we move forward. So this growth sounds great, but where do I start? And even if you tell me where to start, how am I going to even have the time to do it?
I'll explain the system and then I'll get into the time thing because that's definitely the biggest barrier we see with most of our members. But it does start with the financials. So we would want to start by looking at just like what last year's financials were. So the revenue, the variable expenses, the overhead, get an idea of profitability. And then from there, we need to build a new budget for the next fiscal year. So we can project out usually about 12 months and say, okay, roughly, if you were at 36% gross profit, we're going to try and get you to whatever, 41. Here's how we're going to do it through a bit of an increase in labor cost or a decrease in labor costs, maybe increasing the sub amounts you use. And from there, we can have a model. And we say, okay, if let's say the goal is now we want to hit $3 million in revenue and we know how much money we'll make $80,000 off that. How do we get to 3 million? Because we did 2 million last year. Well, we need to look at how many estimates you did, how many sales you got, what your average job size was, and we can start to build out a sales plan where we can see exactly how many leads, estimates, and jobs are required to get to that revenue based on your averages from your last couple of years. And then we can break that sales plan down either to weekly or monthly targets where we can see based on seasonality, how much needs to be booked by certain times in the season, how many estimates need to be done by week, and even how many leads need to be generated. And we can even nerd out even further and figure out which lead sources can contribute to those lead gen activity, those leads. Then we do the same thing with production. So we need to break down how many labor hours are required to produce that much revenue by looking at average dollars produced per labor hour worked, and then be able to build out how many staff you need in the field. And then from there, we can figure out what's the support mechanism required for those staff. So do you need a sales team? Do you need an office team? Do you need, project manager? Do you need a sales manager? Like what other roles need to exist? And likely a lot of these roles already do exist. Sometimes there are 4 roles on one person, often 10 roles on the owner.
Right.
So now we need to start to organize the roles and say who does what and who reports to who. And most importantly, who delivers what, which means they all have what's called a deliverable in every single role, which is a number that role is directly tied to achieving in order to create an ROI for that role to exist in the company. So, sales team might be trying to book 3.5 million, production team might be trying to produce 3.2 million, leaving some leftover work for next year. We've got, the team below that trying to produce a certain amount of hours or trying to book a certain amount of work. Office admin is maybe trying to keep reports in within 24 hours and keep AR below 5%. Like everyone has a number that directly ties to their role that they have direct control over, that they can drive forward. And they know, hey, if I hit this number, then I'm helping the company overall hit its goals for the year, right?
Beautiful.
So we start to break those down, and then we start to say, well, how do you enforce this? So then we bring out the employment agreements, and we templated everything, but we start to talk about how do you put a deliverable, a number into someone's employment agreement, so that they know not only what they're in charge of doing, but they know the tasks that are related to achieving those numbers. Here's all the responsibilities and things that you do. And then from there, we help them reinforce that, that number and that list of duties in someone's job down into what we call GS&R. So now there's like a weekly or monthly or sometimes bi-weekly cadence where the owner is meeting with their sales manager, their production manager, and their office admin to help them hit their goals by year end. They kind of become their coach, basically. They're coaching them through these little meetings. And their team slowly does that with their team below them and so on. So as the company grows, we've got a reporting mechanism to go up and down the organization. We've got a way to take financials and actually bring them right down into somebody's role. And now you can start to really kind of attach all the other bits. There should be a recruiting engine that's directly derived from the employment agreement that you've built out. So now we know the ideal candidate profile that would be able to achieve that job. We know the job ad that would attract that type of person. We know the interview questions that would, and the traits of that type of person required for that job. So we know what questions to ask. If we say, okay, well, if we got this employment agreement, how else do we want to use it? Well, we can now look at the training plan and say, well, if these are all the duties and responsibilities of that role, do we have a way to train that person in all of those things? Because especially if we're going to hold them accountable to these numbers, we better have shown them what success looks like, how to do a good job of each element of their job. And that then emulates and becomes the training plan. So we have an onboarding checklist coupled with standard operating procedures, training, skill checks, all related to that specific role. So the whole contractor growth method, it's more than just an idea. It's how each part of your business links to the next, so that we can create a machine. And the idea is that you get the owner out of being all of those things, because that's currently what they're doing. They're space filling all the stuff that's not defined, and you have them basically just turn one crank, which is leadership, leading their team, and that turns 3 or 4 other cranks down their organization to be able to spin off a result. And you get yourself away from being like a doer of all things to more of a leader of your people and a builder of the systems required to help them do their job.
Awesome. I love it. So all of these things super important to the business. I love how you kind of laid it out like a Lego set. Like we're going 1 through 5. We start with a bunch of random pieces. We start putting them together, and the Legos produce this awesome building that we've created, and it looks just like the picture on the box. The entrepreneur is busy. So for you to coach, over $2 billion is under management, currently being coached. What does that look like from a time standpoint? Like if I was to say, man, I am struggling with all these problems today. Like I can't get my head above water. How does it start with you? How do we get involved so that we can actually make this happen?
So one of the early expectations as you go through our assessment process is to be able to carve out 5 hours a week to work on the business. We don't need more than that. We certainly shouldn't have less than that either, though. And that'll grow. Like as you get into year 2, year 3, year 4 with us, people start to have a full-time job, which is to work on the business, which is great. It means we've done our job. We've decoupled them from the day-to-day. And one of the first tactics is just to look at anybody's role and just say, okay, what are all the things that you do as an owner of this company where it's high time consumption but low skill? And let's look at that. And what are those things? Is that administrative things? Is it doing estimates? Is it dropping off product at the job site? Is it like, what are all the things? And that's either going to be a field runner or a new administrative role, or you're going to be delegating down to your existing team so they take on a bit more responsibility. Or it might be stuff we automate where we're like, look, you're a bit behind the times. There's a lot of technology that's been released literally by the last month, even probably stuff that will change the way you do things. And can we automate this? Can we delegate this down? Or can we turn this into a full-time role? And the nice thing is this full-time role, say you do hire it, will be one of the most valuable roles you'll ever hire for, because they're not just doing that job, they're allowing you to go take time to go do much more high value things, just grow your business. So even for you, Dave, like I'd be curious, like what do you do right now that's high time consumption but low skill? What would be one thing on your plate?
This is good. We're putting it back on me. I like it. I like it. I like it. Here we go. Man, I try to focus on HPA, highest payoff activity.
Yeah.
Okay. So I also believe in having an assistant who does just almost everything for me. Like I am so into the just the importance of my time and the managing of my time that I don't even put fuel in my vehicle. Like I literally text my assistant and say, the truck needs fuel. Make sure it's ready by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, because I believe that time is the most important thing that we have. But to be transparent and to share with you where I probably still struggle today is I probably struggle in email.
Right.
Because I get a lot of email. And so what I've noticed I can do, if I don't time block my email, I could literally spend an entire working day just checking the emails and responding to the emails coming in and out for the different businesses that are in my portfolio. And that for me is a killer. And sometimes I'll fall into that trap and 8-10 hours are gone and all I've done is check email.
Yeah.
And so even to this day, that's still a place where I get stuck and hung up.
Yeah, I have that too, actually, within my own world. I have quite a few emails. I've watched Igor, my business partner. He brought on an executive assistant. That was kind of like his way through it. But yeah, it's something worth problem solving. I'm still probably not quite at that many emails as you are. I've got 2 emails though. So I've got one that the public would know, and then I've got one that's private.
Yep.
And I'm on the private one, and the public one is run by one of our team members, basically, that does our sales coordination. And it's definitely cleared me up from having, 100 emails a day. I've got more like 20 main ones that I have to get back to. Some of it's, I probably get 100 emails, but 80 of them are junk mail. I just need to unsubscribe. I need to unsubscribe.
Yeah, I'm in that same, my executive assistant has access to my email.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things that she does for me is check the junk box and the filter box.
Yeah.
Because that's 15 minutes a day, right? So, there's also sensitive emails that come in that I don't want anybody to share with. So I oh man, maybe you had an employment issue, you got to terminate somebody, or, maybe something happened. And, there's just some sensitivities in there that I really work to, protect. But I think we all have that thing in our business that, that takes us away.
Yeah.
I would say another thing that I see, or that I see struggling with, is, when you get the system going and then the entrepreneur's in their chair and they're not as important, sometimes they like to go in there and create chaos. Like they can blow up the world and say, "Oh, do it my way. Why didn't you do it like this?" So that's another thing that I've got to be careful of, is just letting the team execute.
Yeah, what you mentioned is very common too, and I'm sure you know that, just working with other entrepreneurs. But like, we all do that to ourselves because we get bored, and we think that if we're not doing lots of things, then something must be wrong, and we have to go fix it. And we're in this.
Right.
Yeah. I've done it to myself many times at BTA. So
we're not good with peace, right? We're not good with peace. Like we like a little bit of battle.
You know what, Dave? So what I've been going through myself at this stage in business is I hired my own executive coach, and mostly what we worked on for 2 years was this feeling of being safe. I grew up with a lot of turmoil. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. I think they have a lot of people I've talked to have a lot of crazy stories that brought them to who they are today, and they weren't safe. And so they went and built safety. Good family, good business, good cash flow, good and then when you finally get there, your brain isn't bought into the fact that you are now safe. Like, things are now good. You just still grind as if there's still a big tiger out there waiting to eat you.
It's true.
And working, and it took me 2 years to get, I'd say 60% of the way. Like, I'm not even fully there. It's like getting to a point where I just can be at rest.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do.
In your firm, you coach and consult, but yet you went out and hired an executive coach to coach yourself.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about why.
Because I am a creature of my own habits. And whether I realize them or not, they are the things that make and break the organization that I run, and the family that I have, and all the things that are around me. And it's so interesting how blind I am to my own habits, right?
Yeah.
So like, what we call the windshield wiper syndrome, where like you're so focused on where you're heading, you don't see the wipers flat, like going in front of you the entire time. And
Yeah.
so to have somebody with that perspective, that's unbiased, that's able to kind of call me out on my own BS, that, it's funny, but I could pay them to do this with me, because I felt bad doing this with my friends and my family. Like at some point you're just kind of like, I need more time than you're probably willing to give. And I need some accountability around this. I need some structure also around this. And yeah, I was happy to, because I not only saw the effect it had on our members, but I felt it too, where I was just like, I am not the best version of myself, and it's affecting my staff, it's affecting our members, it's affecting my wife and my kids. I'm not fully present, and I need to learn how to be present. And I'll probably never be fully present, because the way my ADD brain works, but at least I could work on it instead of ignoring it. Right.
Yeah.
And goes back to that thought of like, how can I? And it's just, I need a sounding board. I need someone to hold me to it. So
I love that. It speaks volumes to your business too, because I'm a believer in the executive coach, whether, whatever company you use or however it's set up, but I'm a big believer in that. And I've got a coach that I work with. And I think that, having that coach is really, really important for all the reasons that you mentioned. I'm guessing that your coach is pretty expensive. I know mine's pretty expensive. There's a lot of cost to it. And I think early on, when you're going down this entrepreneurial journey, rolling into something like Breakthrough Academy, like BTA, is absolutely fundamental. Like, I'm a believer in a program like BTA should be like minimum requirement to even get your contractor license. Like, you should be going through that kind of training. You can't invest in yourself enough. You said it's 5 hours a week. That's an hour a day to focus on your business. That changes your life. It changes your world. So what you guys do at Breakthrough Academy, why I was so excited to have you guys on the show, is that you're changing the life for entrepreneurs. And again, it's what you put into it. So, if you get into a coaching and you don't put in the work and you don't take, the task seriously, and you don't make the time commitment, it's going to fail like anything. But if you follow the program and you drive the business based on the fundamentals that you're teaching. And I like that you give that 20% to tweak, change, make it your own, rip off and duplicate. We're all entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. I think that that's really, really, really powerful. I'd love it if you have one off the top of your head, maybe you don't, but maybe a success story about a contractor. Maybe you don't have to give the name or anything, but just a story about, contractor success, or what it really looks like coming through, this program from A to Z. I was broken, I was hurt, I was in peril, but I drove in, I followed the steps, I followed the system, and this is what I was able to achieve. Do you have anything like that in your repertoire?
There's lots. Yeah. I mean, there's the guy who does landscaping for my property.
Okay.
He's, so his name's Jeff, and he was actually, funny enough, I met him when I was really young, because we both went to camp together. We were both, called Camp Kakwa. Anyway, not that it matters.
Sure.
Met him when I was a kid, and I re-met him again doing Breakthrough Academy. So he had contacted us. This was earlier at BTA's time, so I brought him in myself. So I kind of went through the, met him up at Starbucks and did the meetings of where he was at in business. We kind of chuckled that we used to know each other. But yeah, he was a victim to the company, right? And his whole life revolved around the fact that he had to be there every single day. He couldn't basically get away from anything. He didn't know how much money he was making. He wasn't making very much, but he had no idea. And he had gotten into it kind of by happenstance and was busy doing a lot of large scale landscape construction projects. He's still a member to this day. He's probably been with us for 8 years now. We first started by just looking at the business itself, like what products and services are making you money, which ones are not. And it became pretty apparent that his service side was not very big. And because he always figured, well, it doesn't give me much revenue, so why bother? But going through how much profit he was making on the service side, it was like, this should be a thing. Like, this should be much more of a thing than we're currently making it. So we leaned into it, and now I think is about half of his entire company. This is many years later, he's been working on it, but it's about half of his entire company. He's got enough money to live a good, stable life. And here's a really interesting thing. Just this last, I think 4 months ago, he moved to Powell River, which is, I think, 7 hour trip away, 6-7 hour trip away from his actual like company operations area.
Wow.
Yeah. And he lives there because his wife and his kids, he wanted to get them away from the busyness of, the city he's in, and he wanted to have some space and peace, and it's where his family's happier. And so he comes down here once every 2 weeks to kind of like be present in the business, and other than that, runs it remotely, and does really well for himself.
That's the dream.
So
that's the dream. I mean, that's the entrepreneurial dream. I come down, I visit the office once every 2 weeks. I would only see Ralph every 26 times a year. Ralph, sorry, that'd be kind of disappointing. But that's a beautiful thing. He's been with you for 8 years, achieved some greatness. How does coaching work at BTA? Am I in a group session? Am I one-on-one? How long does it take me? How does this happen?
Yeah, so we have different programs primarily because there's different size businesses that come our way, right? So we'll work with somebody that's like 750K to maybe 2 million. They're kind of at a certain stage in business. And then I find people at 2 to 7, 5, 10-ish million, they're at a certain stage in business, and there's people that are 10 million up. And so depending on the program we put them into a group pairing with their like-minded peers, people that are at similar size and actually style, if not the exact same business model they run. And we run them through very broad strokes, but there's like a one-on-one meeting, either bi-weekly or monthly. There's one program where there's no one-on-ones, but depends what people need. And then from there, they've got a group meeting, usually bi-weekly as well. And the groups can be small. So in our larger businesses that work with us, they're kind of like them, 2 other companies, and a coach. And they're basically almost like a board of directors style meeting every 2 weeks. There's another one where we put them in industry specific groups of like 10 to 20, and they're every 2 weeks meeting with a coach and going through basically different concepts, sharing with each other their best practices. It's kind of like a problem solving group, or
Sure.
something like that. And then there's another one that's more just Q&A as a group. It's our smallest tier program, but it's bi-weekly Q&A. So anyone that wants to have questions answered can log in. And usually a few of our coaches are in there, as well as me actually, and just doing Q&A with the people there. So yeah, it's kind of a combination of how do we get your individual questions answered, individual accountability, it's just specific planning done, as well as how do we bring you into a group of like-minded peers that can help problem solve with you together. And so surrounding all of that, the kind of like the mortar that holds all that together is we have like a 3-year education journey for everybody. So they get a bi-weekly, almost like session dropped in their email inbox with like how-to videos, downloadable resources, example files, templates. And so every 2 weeks, they have a new concept to go through, whether it's building your employment agreements, building out a budget, doing situational leadership, conflict resolution. Like there's 72 sessions. So over 3 years, they kind of slowly go through that. And largely what I find happens, and we should back up one more section. We also put them through something called Blueprint first. So their journey is, hey, I've signed up for BTA. I go through Blueprint. It's 6 weeks. They learn a lot. They basically get taught the entire contractor growth method and get given all the tools to go do it themselves. From there, about 80% move forward into coaching. And there's a bit of a back and forth between us and them to be like, are you actually ready for this? And for them to be like, are you ready to commit to this? Then we pair them with their coach in their group, and they go through 3 months of what we call foundations, where we want to get a business plan built. So budget done, sales plan done, production plan done, org structure done, job descriptions done, goal setting review meetings in place, like basic fundamentals to be able to track, monitor the business, and be able to inject like coach down to owner down to team. So we can inject change over time, do change management. That's about 3 months. And then from there, we get into this annual cycle where we're setting an annual goal with quarterly reviews, little like implementation things that need to change. Hey, we're going to put in a project management software. We're going to hire a project manager this year, and we're going to do a new marketing campaign. Great. So that might be the focus for the next few months. And we slowly inject little changes while monitoring the strategic plan and help them get to their year end. And then every year we have a big celebration called the Winter Summit. So everyone comes together. We have a big award ceremony for the top producers and top performers and the turnarounds of the year. We have one called the Turnaround of the Year. So it's like whoever did the biggest like bankruptcy to live a good life. And we celebrate, have a lot of fun. We do a little venture activities as well. And we've created kind of like a tribe of people that know each other, that are in war together. They share their best practices, and then we're there to hold them together and lead them and hold them accountable and make sure they actually hit their strategic plan.
I love it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. If you're out there and you're listening and you're in one of these groups, 750 to 2 million, 2 million to 7 million, 10 million plus, hit up Danny and his team. Absolutely fantastic. We're bringing this thing in for a landing. What's one final tip you would leave with the entrepreneurs on today's call?
mean, it goes back to what I was originally saying about these stages in business, but like, I don't think people realize that this is just a game. I think sometimes people, and I've done it too, you kind of feel like the success or failure of your business is life and death, and it's not. And I think that there's a perspective that I've definitely had growing up on welfare with nothing, is that even in the worst case scenarios, there's still, like, we live in North America. We won the genetic lottery. You are fine. And you have to be able to not just hear that from me, but find that part of yourself that realizes that. Because once you can truly tap into that, then you can go do what you're actually made to go do. Because until then, you're always guarding yourself from the fear of the unknown, or fear of failure, or fear of not being good enough, or whatever it is. And a lot of us have some pretty cool ideas that we hold back. And often it's the fear itself that creates its own reality. And I would just say, if you can somehow over the next year or two, just realize, like, you are fine. You will be fine. You live in North America. Trust me, I've been at the bottom of this, like, economic ladder, and it's not that bad, actually. I had a pretty good mom, obviously, but it's like, I had a pretty good life. I had a sandbox. I was a happy little kid. I didn't need much. And going to this stage in business, I don't feel that much happier. I enjoy the game, and I see it for what it is. And it's fun. I like to help people. I like to surround myself with good people. I don't need to have business be successful or not successful to just say that that is who Danny Kerr is. Danny Kerr is a dad. Danny Kerr is a good friend to some really good people I met when I was younger. Danny Kerr is a cool leader. I'm more and more rested in the fact that, like, I'm okay. And this thing we're doing, it's kind of like a big Monopoly game, and I enjoy it. That's why I do it, but I don't do it because I have to.
Great words of wisdom. I'm not even going to interject anything there. We're going to let that ride, because that was absolutely awesome. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, are you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you probably, I mean, Facebook is probably the thing I'm on the most, but they could find us there. If you contact me on LinkedIn, you're probably going to get my team that's going to message you back. So if you find me on Facebook, you can add me on Facebook. That's right.
All right, add you on Facebook. You're hanging out there. That's a good place to hang out. And I'm not bad. It's not bad. And so, shoot Danny a DM or connect with his team at Breakthrough Academy. Absolutely fantastic. I'm on social media all the time. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, follow me on any of those places. I'm training for a marathon. Check that out. Check out the YouTube channel. If you like this show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box. We'd love to hear from you. Do yourself a favor, get with Breakthrough Academy, get with Danny, get with his team, take your business to the next level. It's time to elevate. It's time to grow. And I just think that no matter what, the number one takeaway from this show for me was you can't outwork an unsystemized business. Get yourself systemized today. Get with the guys at Breakthrough Academy. They're going to take great care of you. Outside of that, we're back next week, 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, same channel. Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show today. It was a privilege learning and listening.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it was awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations, so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.